Today we're joined by Esmeralda Salgado, who I'm sure needs no introduction. She's actually the head of MFL at Prince's Risborough School and has an illustrious career in MFL as well as international projects. Today she's going to be going through her ideas on listening skills for the secondary classroom. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Esmeralda.
And thank you very much, Languagenut, for inviting me along. And lovely to talk about listening skills. I think they are super important. I think everybody understands as well, probably agrees with me, that listening is one of the parts that the students find the trickiest in the exam. So I'm going to give you today some of my tips, what activities I shared. I hope it is very, very practical, and how we can integrate Languagenut into the whole journey of listening. I'm thinking mainly of a GCSE, but I'm hoping that some of these activities and strategies can be used all the way from Key Stage 3, and why not even Key Stage 2, okay, adapted to the right level. So the first thing I think to understand, in order for the students to be successful in listening, is to understand the language journey. Everyone who's come to my webinars, I always start with this, and only for a couple of minutes, because I think it's really, really important for students to be able to be able to speak the language. We need to start with listening, and the listening is what I call the modeling. The modeling of the language is the input. Okay, once we have that, then we move normally to structure production. When the students, they have embedded the vocabulary and the structures, they start practicing little by little. Then they start being creative with the language, when they start adopting the rules, and they start manipulating the language that we taught them in the modeling. And finally, they become spontaneous. And there's like a little bit of a circle there. And the reason sometimes why the students are not very good at listening, definitely at GCSE, is because we go too fast in this process. We don't have enough modeling. If we don't have enough modeling, what happens then is that the students are not embedding the language, therefore they cannot really understand it. And if they cannot understand it, everything collapses, and it becomes very, very, very stressful. So in order to really be successful in the GCSE exam, as the final goal, can we say, and of course being able as well to be able to speak the language, we need to start thinking of listening not as testing, although at the end they will have a test, but as listening for learning. Listening basically as a tool to start with, as a way to introduce the language so they're really familiar with all the different phonics and all the different sounds of the language. Okay, so the way we study, so how do we do that? Well, it means that when we start teaching, even if it's not just in Key Stage 3, but also GCSE, we should start with the basics. Language should be about 95% input understandable. Okay, if we don't understand basically 95% of the words that we are hearing, basically we cannot cope with that. We cannot do it. So one of the things that we need to be doing is from day one is to start doing activities that the kids feel confident with, and then we start gradually increasing the type of the vocabulary and the structures that we present in them. And some of the activities that really do the work really, really, really wonders, although you may think that's not listening, is actually, for example, dictations. Dictations is a fantastic way to make sure that these kids will be able to do listening later on in the process then. So some of my favorite dictation activities, and as I do this is basically how I introduce the language. Basically, I introduce the language first, where we do choral repetition, and then straight away dictation activities with mini whiteboards. I do mini whiteboards because then nobody gets really threatened basically on how to do things basically. And if they make a mistake, they can really get rid of it quickly. There are a lot of different dictations that you can do. The traditional dictation, but you can do ones I really like is read, stop, and finish. But basically, you do a dictation, then you stop, and you expect the child to try to guess what is the next word that they're gonna say. So you may say something like, en mi tiempo libre me gusta mon, and then you say tar a caballo, because you really introduce the language and they're familiar with it. Okay, so that works really well. Delayed dictation, another fantastic activity to really get the listening going, where it's the same as the normal dictation, but they need to wait for 10 seconds before they write their answer. So in their heads, they're processing the information. I love, well, when the pair dictation, why not? When they're actually working with each other. Another one of my favorite ones as well is basically dictate new words, not learned yet. I think that it works really well for the phonics. Or the traditional one, break the flow, where you give them basically a big, sorry about that, when you give them a big sentence like that, there are no basically gaps, and they need to listen to you and then decide when a word finishes with the other. I think this is really, really important, especially in French, when you go the liaison, but also in Spanish when we go sinalefa. So it's up for the children sometimes, one of the words, when they hear Spanish or French, they hear like just one particular word. So the idea here is that they need to recognize when one word finishes and the next one starts. So that's really, really, really good. Another activity that do at this stage, so this is before attempting any audio material from any platform, from Languagenut, from the audio from the textbook or the exam board, is things like Beat the Teacher. So this is like a normal dictation, and I do this as starter sometimes, where basically I tell them the time sentences and words with vocabulary they heard. So I want the students all the time to be very familiar with the vocabulary. So when they listen to it in an exam condition, they are used to the phonics system. And the students, you have to translate it for me. So I call it like Beat the Teacher, because they need to be quick. And I start very slowly, saying words of sentences, chunks, very slowly, and then little by little, increase my speed, and they need to be all the time translating faster and faster and faster and faster. And then if I put a mixability class, I can slow down again to give the chance to different students to be with me, basically. Another activity that really could works really well at this stage is what I call listening battleships. So basically, this is like a grid, like the one that you got here. You got the vocabulary that you want the students to be familiar with. You want the students to really learn, and you can have it in Spanish or more difficult in English. Like for example, you got it here, and then you say the sentences, and the students have to write the coordinate of the sentence that you are basically dictating or saying there. Okay, so that works really well. And I like this activity because then it leads itself to be used for a speaking activity later on when you are in the structured production journey. So that works really well as well. Any personal listening activities are great. With that, I mean personal listening activities, any activities where they need to listen for particular parts of a speech. So for example, if you're doing something with recognizing the difference between the present and the past tense, okay, so you, for example, you may say words like I play, juego, or I played, jugué, and they just need to write down, which one is in the past only, or which one is in the present. So you can do, you can play up with this type of activity. Sometimes I use this with buzzers. So if you listen the present tense, you press a buzzer or you clap. If you listen the past tense, you just need to stay quiet. Okay, or you can ask them straight away. You listen to verbs, was that present, was that past tense? In a second level, you can then ask them, okay, actually translate what did I say? And at this point, I don't give them any time markers. So I don't say last year, el año pasado, or anything like that, because I don't want it that way. I know already the past. So it's just purely things like grammar, is verbs. So it works very well with verbs, but it could be with as well with auxiliary verbs, for example, or it could be the difference between masculine and feminine. So actually, they need to listen for particular grammatical endings, and I think that's very important as well, because in the exam, some of the exercises that they will get, or especially they get penalized if it was something in the past or was in the future, etc. So I think that works really well as well to get training the ear with them. Okay, any transcribing, this is a really good activity as well, transcribing activities where you basically say sentences to the kids and they basically transcribe them into English. So I'm saying, any vocabulary that I know they feel very confident. So this is about building up confidence. And at the beginning, I need to start really slowly, but then I start increasing my speed as they get along. And they just have to translate it for me orally, or I may ask them to do it with mini whiteboards. Okay, so that is very good indeed as well. So all of this idea here is using listening for learning. I'm using the listening for them to learn the vocabulary. I'm using the learning for them to really classify and recognize different grammatical elements. And I'm using the listening, of course, for phonics as well. So it's not a test of this. This is all doing activities that are gonna train the ear before I even attempt to do any listenings from a textbook or from the exam. At this point as well, for this particular area, Languagenut has got a really good area on vocabulary. So actually, you can use, the kids can actually listen to the vocabulary there. They can repeat it as well with them as well. And actually that would work really well in here for this particular stage. Now, the second thing, that we want to talk about, yes, is listening for learning, listening as modeling. And what about personalizing the experience? So one of the things I tend to use a lot lately is Vidnos. Vidnos is an AI, basically a website that will create basically videos for you, avatars. So you basically choose the avatar that you want to, and then you type the text that you want the avatar to speak. And then once you do that, you can download your video. Then once you got that, you can exploit it in every way you want to. I call it personalization because then when you create your video, then you can use any language you actually want. If you notice in the previous stage, when you were doing things with dictation, that the students could not go through the past and the present. If you notice the students are not very good, with a particular type of vocabulary, this is a fantastic opportunity as well to reinforce the vocabulary and at the same time reinforcing the listening skills. So just to give you an example, this is what one of these videos looked like, okay? And this is a free app. So this is one of the videos, okay? So this is about ¿qué hiciste durante las vacaciones?
El verano pasado fui de vacaciones con mis amigos. Fuimos a Barcelona porque siempre he querido ir allí y también hace calor y sol en verano.
So you get the idea. So basically what I did, I chose my avatar. It took me 5 minutes. I can get up to 3 minutes for free, with Vidnos. And once I got my video, what I do is I exploit it. I insert it in my Google Classroom, and they will be filling the gaps activities. They will be transcribing activities. They do have as well the subtitles, so they can listen and read at the same time. Everything to do, again, for learning. So I'm not testing, and what I want is to concentrate on what they're listening and listening to all the vocabulary we've done in lessons. And I can personalize it because this is the vocabulary I want them to understand, the 95% production, understanding vocabulary. The same thing with Vocabulary. Everybody probably has listened to it as head of Vocabulary, where you record yourself. You record yourself, basically, then you download the MP3 file. And once you got it, again, you can insert it in Google Classroom, and then you can have different dictations, different transcriptions, anything, that you want to do, activities with that particular personalized piece of audio in there. So, what about textbook audios? Okay, so this is basically really what normally I found. Textbook audios, or the audio files, they're absolutely fine, but the tasks that come with them, sometimes they don't correspond to the exam skills that that they will be required to demonstrate in the actual exam. So I find it very, very annoying because the actual audios, they're actually quite good, but what they have to do with it is a little bit poor. So what we started doing in our school, in my previous schools, is to take those listenings, those audios, and together with videos from Vidnotes, I actually also use my own videos as well. We use Snapchat. But now I prefer Vidnos, to be honest. Also, the recordings I've used with Vocabulary, and then using the task from Languagenut, and I put all that together in a little bit of in a Google, basically in a document, and the students come to the lesson. The students bring the headphones in, so because we don't have money for a language lab, and we create a language lab in the lesson. So the idea is that the students have got the opportunity to go through the different activities at their own pace. And Languagenut works perfectly here because it's just like a very nice way as well to introduce the exam skills that they will need, because you will have in LanguageNut the actual exam skills elements that you will need, like they got dictation, they got answering questions, is that true, is that false, who is talking, or open questions as well. And so you can start from audios, something like fill in the gaps, moving to the videos, and then when they're doing transcriptions, they need to put sentences in the right order. Okay, the same with vocabulary, and finishing with the LanguageNut activities. So the whole thing will look something like that. So for example, I'm giving you actually an example first from year 9, because we started the GCSE in year 9, just to get you an idea, and then I got another example from Key Stage 4. But it's just here's looking there. So the idea here is, like, remember, the students bring the headphones and they go through the different slides. They go the audio here. So this is just vocabulary. I just put it in there. And here, for example, they need to listen to the audio and write in English what you hear. Another one is a dictation. Okay, listen to the and fill in the gaps. The other one is gonna be, they got the avatar here, and then you got the little video they created with Vidnos. This is the transcript, and this is basically the fill in the gaps activity. And then I may ask them questions about the video. And then what happens here is that people are working at different speeds. So you've got some people working, spending 20 minutes if they have to with a slide 2, or moving to slide 3 when they finish. Another example of doing this, we work in Key Stage 4 is like this. So Key Stage 4, rather than slides, I tend to use it more like in docs. And this works. So here what I've done is actually is exploiting the audio from the textbook. So the textbook, what they had to do was very little. Okay, there is some vocab there that was in the transcript, so there is a quite big transcript there. There's some fill in the gaps, and this is very important. They got the transcript here, so they can actually listen while they are reading to start with, and then they can try to listen and get up the words, trying to fill in the words that they need to fill in the gaps. This works, and then they move on to the next activity. Okay, and then at the end, when they finish, they do have the assignment for LanguageNut. Okay, at the same time, or you can put LanguageNut at the very beginning. The reason why I like this, because normally this audio, what they had to do in the actual textbook exercise is just to fill in a little bit of a table. So there's a lot of listening and fantastic audio, to be honest, for very little effort of what they have to do. And I thought this is great for listening for learning. So I want them to listen to the transcript. I want them to fill in the gaps. I want them to learn vocabulary. I'm going to exploit that particular audio. And we do this in individual lessons, dedicated only for listening, and they put the headphones on, and when they finish, they always got the LanguageNut assignment, that then at the same time as well, they can also do it as well for homework at the same time. So how does this whole sequence works, thinking about the external examination? This is like a 5-step approach that really works. First of all is introducing any vocabulary that you want to introduce. And then when you go there, is intensive listening tasks as part of the modeling stage in the classroom. That's where we do a little dictation, all these activities I showed you at the very beginning, the listening battleships, everything that you do as a whole class. And normally I do that myself with my voice. They get used to, we do the parsing activities, the grammar incorporated in the listening. Then every 2 weeks, all our students at GCSE will have an independent listening practice lesson. We do it via Google Classroom. So basically, I already showed you, they get the activities in there. Okay, they bring the headphones, the audios are there. They need to open the audio. Sometimes it's an audio from Vocaro, something very specific. Sometimes is a video from Vidnops, and sometimes is the actual audio material from any textbook that you're using, because we are using our textbook there. And then this is important at this point to make sure that you have the transcript. Okay, so students are trained to cover the transcript where possible, but while they're listening, they're not getting it. it's where they can use it, and they can use it, they can listen while they're reading. Okay, so they get away from the idea that listening is all the time a test. It's not. Listening, because it's input, is actually a very good way of learning a language, like you would do with reading. Okay, so yes, the idea is that the students are not tested, but they learn from the text. Okay, as part of this process, students can also use Languagenut task, working independently. Normally, I like doing that at the end, and then they finish the Languagenut then for homework. Okay, because again, you in the Languagenut you got all the topics, and the reason why I like with Languagenut is because as so far with all these activities, it's been the vocabulary I've been teaching them, like basically holding the hand. When they start doing the Languagenut activities, you don't create the Languagenut task, they're pre-populated, meaning that yes, they're from a topic, yes, they're using the vocabulary from the board, but what they're doing now, they may see some vocabulary that you have not covered in the lesson, so you are training them to cope when they're unpredictable, but still they can have access to the transcript, they still can access to the vocabulary, and they're supposed to make a note of that vocabulary there. And this is why I say in part 3, this is very important. While covering step 2, students highlight a new vocabulary. Sometimes, as you saw, I highlight it for them because I know that vocabulary is in the official vocabulary list. Okay, and they add it to a personal random vocab Quizlet. That means all my students, we do use Quizlet, and I create Quizlets for them, but they also got the responsibility to have a Quizlet always open in the lesson. We do have when they bring their own device, and any words that appears, especially during this listening, independent listening practice lessons, they need to write the word up, look the word up in the dictionary online, and then adding up to their own Quizlet. Okay, and they have to learn it for homework or at some point. The idea is that can they then become familiar and can they recognize it? Okay, and they can self-test themselves the next lesson for that new vocabulary. This is very important because then we come across again the idea of using listening again for learning, and listening to actually learn vocabulary, not just testing. Students repeat steps 1 and 2 in other lessons. We continue with the normal teaching of lessons where we do normal modeling exercises. Again, when it's our turn, we do the Google Classroom independent listening practice in lessons, and then we'll move to stage 5. Stage 5, what includes now is once a topic, this is normally happens when a topic is finished. Once the topic is finished, and we've been doing steps 1, 2, and 3, probably sometimes many times, depending on how long it takes us to teach the topic. Once the topic is fully covered, students then get exposed to exam style questions and past papers, from the actual paper. At that point, using a Languagenut is fantastic. Okay, because what you got at that point is basically looking at the actual exam papers. So you can go through paper from 2023, paper from 2022. Okay, look at the listening. Okay, and then we read the listening, we do the listening together. Okay, we look at the transcript, we look at the question, we look and see why is this working, why is this difficult, why would this be a right question, why this would be not the right question at the same time. And then we do that together as a class. And next time when we do have our listening independent practice, what we do at that point is that we include one of these past papers questions, okay, for that. And at that point, Languagenut is even more important because then you got the whole exam skills there together with the actual exam papers there. And the idea here is that you do it first as a whole class together, but then to make sure as well that then they got the opportunity next time to work independently and go through the different things on their own as well, basically independently with the listening, while the listening as well with the transcript. Okay, and the whole sequence works really, really, really well. So it's a 5-step approach. You all the time basically training the ear for the listening skills, and you are personalizing the whole basically learning process, and at the same time you're using technology, okay, that they can then carry they basically can use at the same time later on at home as well during the process. So that works really, really well. If you go to Languagenut, I just want to show you very, very, very quickly. And once you come here, you do have the AQA, so you can obviously you got the AQA, you got the Excel. Okay, when you enter, you can select. You got secondary, you got basically primary school. The section are all the sections are good. I like the fact as well that you can learn vocabulary, but you do have as well the exam skills, and I think these are the ones that are really good, the exam skills that you can actually go to. And once you are there, okay, you can choose even, and this is a good news as well, you start this process. You saw, I got example as well from year 9. You can start as well all the way from here stage 3. So why not? They start learning the vocabulary. So you choose the topic, for example. You choose basically anything that you want to do in there. You can be very, very, very specific in there, and then you obviously in this case we're doing listening, and you can choose easy, medium, hard in there. But you go there, you got multiple choice question, who said what, open listening comprehension. I think this is really good, and then you got the dictation as well in there. Okay, I like the open listening comprehension because in my sequence, they've already done a lot of activities with the parsings, they've done a lot of activities with the videos. So Languagenut is perfect for the listening comprehension. And this is quite good because obviously they listen to it. They can basically as well say if they want to go slower or they want to go faster. And the students can type in there. Everything gets submitted because you go your classes, you can see basically how well everybody is progressing. So at the end is a really quick way of doing to see who has done the work, and as well to see basically to not spend ages in doing marking, okay? Because obviously all the other activities they created, like videos, whatever, you will have to mark it yourself. The advantage with using Languagenut as well is that you don't need to mark it because automatically it marks itself, and it will give them a score. And that's basically a bit how it works. It works with it. So we got the Languagenut, and then we got the exam style questions to go with it. And that is basically a little bit, because I know we don't have much time there, but that was a little bit very rushed things, that everything that we do basically in a nutshell at Princess Rivers School, and it works really well. I talk a lot as well about listening as well in my blog, so you want to have more opportunities there, you can have a look in there.
Just on the platform at the moment under the exam skills, I've gone into Key Stage 4. As you saw with Esmeralda, we've got AQA and we've also got EdXL. And we do have those 4 exam skills for the listening. So we do have the multiple choice. We've got the who said what, the open listening, which you've seen, and the dictation, making a comeback after however many years. I think I had that when I was at school, and now it's back again. So if we have a look at the multiple choice, as we saw before, we have the audio and we've got that snail that will slow the audio down.
Lo que me da miedo es la crisis de alojamiento.
And then, of course, students can move this back and forth if they're using the browser independently. But of course, you're more than welcome to use these in class as well. We've got the 3 different speakers for the different markers at the bottom. And then we also have this extra button here. So if you do have a Languagenut subscription and maybe haven't noticed that there's a button there, we do also give you the transcript. So of course, thinking about flipped learning and your sequence of learning, you might want to front load the vocabulary first. And using the custom content feature, you could always pick out the vocabulary that you think your students maybe need a little bit more help with, upload that as your custom content first before you then move on to the listening itself. So here we're under equality for level 3, and if you scroll down you'll see all of the activities for equality level 3, so the harder. And as we've seen, of course, we've got the Key Stage 3 and the Key Stage 4. There are 3 levels of challenge at each. So over the 2 key stages on Languagenut, you do have 6 levels of challenge. So really easy to take a year 7 all the way through up to year 11. And of course, when they get to year 11, you've got everything as revision as well. So because we give you the transcript, of course, you can then make your own activities from it. You can make your own reading if you wanted to, maybe a fill in the gap, predict what's coming next, some other games, reading out and then stopping on the word and then getting them all to call it out. And of course, a read aloud. So thinking about phonics, of course, we have our phonics section as well. And of course, both of those skills then play into one another. If we go back and just have a look at the dictation as well, as I said, making its comeback. So we do have dictation under the exam skills. We also have it under the sentence building as well. So there's two opportunities for some dictation. So at the top you have the audio, and then students of course can slow it down again.
1. Lo que me preocupa es la discriminación contra las mujeres.
Etc. So at the bottom here, this is their writing space. And again, if you do have a subscription, you may already know that copy and paste has been disabled across anywhere where students need to write in their own answer. So they can't go and look up the answer, Google Translate or whatever it is. And at the bottom, of course, for being more accurate in the target language, they have all of the punctuation and accents characters that they would need for that language. So hopefully those two activities there, along with all of the ideas that we've already heard, have given you a really good idea of something that maybe you want to use in your classroom coming up. And I would just like to again say thank you to Esmeralda for all of her ideas. It's been really lovely hearing everything that you've got to say. So yeah, I hope that everybody's been given a few ideas and you've got a few more resources, and with the ones that we've showcased on Languagenut, hopefully that gives everybody a little bit more help with listening. Certainly my students, it was the skill that they didn't really like that much, but there's no other way to get better than to practice. So with all of these lovely ideas to engage them, I'm sure that they will improve. If you currently don't subscribe and would like to book in for a demo, then please contact inquiries@languagenut.com. Also, if you've enjoyed this event, please give us a shout out on social media. Thank you again to Esmeralda, and thank you to everybody for watching. Have a lovely evening.